I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. This is Conduit News, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. So glad that you are with us. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Got a great show for you. Going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen on the Senate side of impeachment. We'll be talking with Mr. Dan Perkins about that coming up at the bottom of the hour. Then we've got the Family Council's Ken Yang at 7:33. A lot of news to get to between now and then, both Arkansas and national. Hey, I will say this on the impeachment front. Did you hear the latest wrinkle in the Democrats? The House Democrats are going to attempt to impeach, the president on Wednesday. That's when the actual vote's going to be. Most people expect them to clearly have the votes, even though, you do have some Democrats becoming Republicans, or one, what's his name, Van something, becoming a Republican. Now they're saying, though, and this all makes sense now, because if you notice, Chuck Schumer has now been in the news. Chuck Schumer, the minority leader of the U.S. Senate, and he's going to the cameras like he loves to do. He's going to the microphones, and he's virtue signaling, acting like he really wants a fair trial. And no, he doesn't want a fair trial. He wants the right to impeach the president. He wants to try to... Chuck Schumer's going to try to do everything he can to figure out a way to actually remove the president from office. And I hope that Republican Mitch McConnell gives him no wiggle room at all. It doesn't really even give him anything. I don't think he should give the Democrats anything after what they did in the House. Shouldn't give him anything. Well, so Chuck Schumer is running interference now for the House ahead of the vote. He's trying to get Mitch McConnell to agree to a certain amount of witnesses. He's trying to get Mitch McConnell, more importantly, to agree to not allow the Republicans to call people like Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, the whistleblower, and things like that. He's now out there saying, we don't want this to become a circus and promote conspiracy theories on the right or the left. And so by him saying the left, the right, or the left, he's trying to come across as reasonable. He's trying to do the old, game that Democrats do, where they virtue signal, they get the media on their side, and then the media tries to get the Republicans to dance to their beat. With President Trump in office, I don't think that's going to work this time. So now there is, I saw on Twitter, somebody floating the idea, what if the Democrats in the House impeach the president but do not vote to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate? Therefore, there wouldn't be a trial. So impeachment would then just be some symbolic gesture where you wouldn't actually the Senate wouldn't actually take it up. It would just be, they would vote to impeach, but they wouldn't vote to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate. Now, I don't even know if that's a possibility. I'm just saying that's what I heard one person say. And the reason they wouldn't want to send it to the Senate is exactly what I said last week. I speculated that when this is all said and done, when we get into the hindsight of things, and if the Senate were to actually conduct a trial, will we, in hindsight, say, you know what, Donald Trump wasn't on trial, the Democrats were actually on trial? Because what we all know, the reason this has happened is because President Trump is not going to stop attempting to expose the deep state, Democrat, and Republican corruption internationally, and that's what's going on here. So, I don't know. just be ready for that one. That's a possibility, that they vote to impeach. Of course, then I don't know what their liberal base would do then, their progressive base. I mean, then what's the whole point? Of course, they had to see this was inevitable anyway, because they're not going to have the votes to throw the president out of office in the Senate anyway. So this whole thing has been an exercise in attempting to stall and delay and get the media to try to work people up into a frenzy for something. I don't know what. But honestly, the entire Democrat establishment, if you really look at it, they're trying to stall. They're just trying to slow down the exposing of their corruption, because they had to know that it's inevitable. I mean, if you look at the makeup of the Senate, they don't have the votes. Anyway, be prepared for that one. In other news, Carter Page. Okay, we now know Carter Page his rights were totally abused. He's probably going to be a very wealthy man because of the Inspector General report. He's now got so many. This man could sue. He's probably going to get $50 million. Jonathan Turley from jonathanturley.org writes, quote, "While the media has been quick to call developments as vindication for figures like Comey, it is largely silent on the poor treatment shown Carter Page and the lack of evidence against him and supporting the Russian investigation as a whole. Page has emerged as the Richard Jewell of the Russia investigation." I found that fitting. It's interesting how things are not really a coincidence when you look at them, considering that Clint Eastwood's movie debuted this weekend about Richard Jewell and the FBI hatchet job, along with the media, that destroyed this man's life. He was an innocent man. He did not contribute. He was a hero of the Atlanta Olympics bombing, and they tried to say he was the suspect. And so, for context, I went back and I found when Richard Jewell finally got to testify in front of Congress. Just listen to this little excerpt and tell me if you don't think that there's some parallels here between Richard Jewell and Carter Page, meaning it's happened before and it really happened again. Listen.
"I am also here to ask you to commit yourselves and the resources of this committee to a legitimate investigation into the very disturbing questions raised by the FBI investigation of me. Unanswered questions that will remain unanswered unless an objective third party investigates the FBI and the Justice Department's conduct."
John Durham.
The first unanswered question is simply why. Not only did the FBI accuse the wrong man, its agents in Atlanta and officials in Washington actively participated in publicly humiliating me and privately violating my constitutional rights. The media followed the FBI's lead.
Yep. Stop. The media followed the FBI's lead. I mean, this was just really a foreshadowing. I mean, just a taste. I would encourage you to look into the Richard. And you know what? That's what's so interesting here. The social justice warriors have done a smear job on Clint Eastwood's movie, because apparently the Atlanta Constitutional Journal that was smearing Richard Jewell, in the movie, Clint Eastwood depicted one of the female reporters going the extra mile, if you will, for a story, for a source, getting information from a source from, more carnal means, if you will. And everybody else like, can you believe it? Women don't do that. Reporters don't do that. How would you? That's not true. That's not true. She didn't do that. It's like, okay. I mean, who knows? I don't know. It's a movie. It's based on a true story, but it is a movie. But are you really going to tell me that there's no female reporter that's ever done that? Come on, that's ridiculous. Of course they have. And anyway, so the social justice warriors boycott the Clint Eastwood movie, Richard Jewell. You can't do that. You can't believe that he would do this. And it's all a distraction, because the truth of the matter is, and I haven't seen the movie, but I've read up about enough about it to know, and I know the actual story. Clint Eastwood made this movie because of what's going on in the present day. And if you go watch it, you're going to know that, yes, the media can tell you something is 100% accurate and be 100% wrong. And we are seeing that play out today. They can tell you that this is the truth, that this is the news, meaning this is what is new today in the news. And they can be completely 100% wrong. And that's where we are today. And that's why I've told you, and it's a very scary time, but oftentimes, whatever the press tells you, you can believe the 180-degree opposite, and you're right, and they're wrong, and that is scary because we have a press now that is so agenda-driven, and they are protecting something. They are protecting something, and I think some of these journalists have a lot to lose, a lot more than you and I know. But I'm just telling you, this is, it's gotten to the point where it's even past just the dogma of the progressive left, and there's something even bigger going on here. The telephone number, excuse me, folks, I'm a little under the weather this morning. The telephone number is 870-275-9799 if you would like to text that number. Back to this piece real quick. Carter Page has emerged as the Richard Jewell of the investigation. After he was acquitted in a major fraud trial, former Labor Secretary Ray Donovan asked, "Which office do I go to get my reputation back?" The trial was ruinous for Donovan, personally and financially, and the question was a fair one. Donovan, however, at least received a trial. Former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page has never been given a fair hearing, let alone a trial, to clear his name. As the two political parties spin the results of the report by the Justice Department Inspector General, one matter remains unaddressed. Someone needs to apologize to Carter Page. I do not know Page, Jonathan Turley writes, and have had only one conversation with him that I can recall. Indeed, my only impression of him was shaped by the image repeated in endless media segments of a shady character who was at worst a Russian spy and at best a Russian stooge. Page became the face and focus for the justification of the Russia collusion investigation. His manifest guilt and sinister work in Moscow had to be accepted in order to combat those questioning the allegations of Trump campaign collusion with the Russians. In other words, his guilt had to be indisputable in order for the Russian collusion investigation to be, so to speak, unimpeachable. Ultimately, Special Counsel Robert Mueller found no evidence of collusion or conspiracy by Trump associates or the campaign with those Russians intervening in the election. However, Horowitz found that the FBI never had any real evidence against Page before beginning its investigation, codenamed Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Soon after the investigation was opened, it became clear that Page had been wrongfully accused and was, in fact, working for the CIA, not the Russians. Page himself later said he was working with the CIA, yet the media not only dismissed his claim, but was very openly dismissive while portraying him as a bumbling fool. Horowitz found that FBI investigators and lawyers had determined that the allegations involving Page fell short of a case for probable cause to open a secret warrant under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Those investigations were then told by the eventually fired FBI Director Andrew McCabe to look at the Steele dossier, blah, but we know the rest of the story here, so there's no need to rehash this. But that point about Carter Page had to be involved with the Russians in some insidious way in order for any of the possible connections between the Trump campaign and Russia to be remotely possible. They had to stick it on Carter Page. So you realize, and if there's any leftists out there, you realize based on that fact, the entire narrative was a complete lie. The president, once again, is completely vindicated here when he says this was a hoax. It was a hoax. And somebody like President Trump, who has accomplished what is arguably the greatest thing somebody can accomplish in this present-day world, which is being elected President of the United States, is not going to let it go because they have been saying he got this office by cheating and by conspiring with Russians. And it was not even close to being true. And somebody like President Trump is not going to let it go. And that is why you have the hammer coming. And it's coming. And yeah, the media, what are they going to do? They're going to lie. They're going to say, we're a banana republic. President Trump is indicting his political foes. This is not how we do things in America. Well, it's about to be. And no, we're not a banana republic. If you break the law, you've broken the law. And that's what we have. We have had, on both sides, we're going to find, just my gut feeling, criminals have been representing us in our government. Telephone number is 870-275-9799. Going to reset. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Why am I the same person today? Why am I me? Yeah, that's a good one. Joe's reading me a funny meme. You ever wake up in the morning? The meme is basically, I'm going to change one of the words for obvious reasons, Joe. But it's just a meme. It's like, hey, you ever wake up in the morning and you're like, this guy again. Referring to yourself. Like, oh, no, not this guy again. Yeah, I think a lot of us do sometimes. That's pretty funny. That's really good. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Hey, we got big changes coming here at Conduit News. We're getting away from radio, ending radio, starting on, I guess the last broadcast will be New Year's Eve. And then on January 2nd, we'll be launching our new format. Big changes coming, new shows, same insights, though, same great news. But we've got a way to really reach a much broader audience, and so we're really, really excited about this change. And if you want to make sure you follow that, and you're let's say you only get Conduit News on the radio right now, we feel for you. But hey, we've got all these digital ways for you to stay in contact with us. So I would encourage you to go to the Facebook page, go to conduitnews.com, go to the YouTube channel, like us, subscribe to us, sign up for the newsletter. Do all of those things, or just do one of those things. It's a way that you're going to stay in contact. But hey, you know what? I can pretty much, if you're on social media at all, you're going to be seeing us having a presence there, a bigger presence than we already do. And so really excited about all this, and so make sure that you prepare for the transition. I mean, I was gone 2 days last week, and that's because I was preparing. That's what we were having to do some work to get everything ready. So just wait. We're going to have a new website, going to have new formats. Just you wait, Henry Higgins. Just you wait. 870-275-9799. Yeah, obscure references will probably continue. 870-275-9799. Let's see here. Let's see. Somebody writes, Paul, are you all buying all the mainstream media in Arkansas? No. No, not going to do that. But hey, you know what? Our continued reporting is going to continue to expose the mainstream media here in Arkansas for what they won't cover. They should be covering wall-to-wall demanding answers about Governor Asa Hutchinson and his law firm that his son claims he's running. Asa claims that he will never. Well, no, Asa says, quote, I don't anticipate returning back to his international law firm that's now got the same communist Chinese entities that he's given taxpayer money, a la Joe Biden, Hunter Biden. It's actually much worse, I think, than Hunter Biden and Joe Biden in a way. We'll see. I think Rudy Giuliani has a lot more context that's been given to the Hunter Biden situation. And we'll tell you a little update about Hunter Biden and his baby's mama coming up at the top of the next hour. So there is some news on that. But can you imagine if instead of Hunter Biden just getting a job on Burisma, that Hunter Biden was working for the Joe Biden law firm and had Ukrainian clients that his son was managing while he was vice president? Can you imagine it? I mean, that would be a lot more clear-cut example of a giant conflict of interest, wouldn't it? I mean, I know getting on the board of Burisma with no energy experience, making $80,000 a month is bad, but you know, in a way, that's just a job versus if it had the vice president's name on the law firm. You know what I mean? And the law firm advertised that Joe Biden is the vice president, well politically connected, and you need to be using this law firm because, and that's exactly what the governor's done. That's exactly. I mean, go look it up. Go look it up. Okay, telephone number 870-275-9799. Peloton. I didn't even know what Peloton was. It's an exercise bike. And much like the Hallmark Channel, the radical left must ruin it, must destroy it. There's this ad, Peloton. There's this ad of a man giving his wife for Christmas an exercise bike. And everybody's upset because they thought it was oppressive. They thought it was a patriarchal move. How dare a man give his wife an exercise bike? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? It must be because you don't think she's in good enough shape. And then what did the left do? Well, the woman in question here, Joe, can you just show this screenshot? Go to the Peloton YouTube video. I just want people to see this. The woman in question is in good shape. Look at her. Here's her screenshot of her as she looks at the bike, and she's like, and so she's in good shape. I mean, she's she's not a large woman. Well, this made everybody on the left really mad. They're like, can you believe this? She's already skinny. She doesn't need to be on a bike, which is just because you're skinny doesn't mean you're in good shape. Just because you're skinny doesn't mean you're healthy. I thought the left knew this. But can you imagine if they're going to complain about anything, the radical left. If she was like a 400-pound fat woman and the husband gave her a bike, they'd freak out about that too. I'm just so sick of this. Are you not tired? Sick and tired of this. Unbelievable. Did you hear what Max Brantley had to say over the Arkansas Times? Of course you didn't. Of course you didn't. About the Hallmark ads, he's celebrating the fact that Hallmark is putting the LGBTRSTLNE Would You Like to Buy Val Community commercials back on the Hallmark Channel after they were taken out because a conservative mothers group was like, hey, this is family programming. And so Max Brantley is talking about the religionists. Joe, did you know that you're a religionist? According to Max Brantley, you're a religionist, and I'm a religionist. The religionists are trying to bully and they're trying to rule by minority rule. Max Brantley, in his piece on the Arkansas Times, actually believes that a majority of Americans want, on the Hallmark Channel, an ad with two girls kissing while they're getting married. A majority are clamoring for it. We'll talk about that as well. Don't go anywhere, folks. We got a great show for you.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. We're going to check in with Dan Perkins. He's back with us, Islamic historian, terrorism analyst. You've read his stuff over at thehill.com. Also the author of the Brotherhood of the Red Nile trilogy. Dan, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm fine. You got your Christmas shopping done?
No, I have not. I have a serious problem. I don't know when I'm going to find time, but I know what I got to get, though, so that's good. What about you? Are you all set?
Yes, sir. All I have to do is wrap it.
Okay, that's good. That's the. Of course, I'm a terrible Christmas gift wrapper. I'm not. I don't pay attention to detail. Everybody knows the gifts that I wrap because they just look terrible.
Yeah, but I think the school we are, we're not very good.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, so Dan, I have this story here about impeachment, but it's an interesting take. Washington Times, Lindsey Graham is saying that impeachment makes Trump stronger for Middle East diplomacy because apparently, again, the Senate Judiciary Committee chairman is saying that foreign leaders, he just recently traveled overseas, foreign leaders are impressed by President Trump's defiance of impeachment. Have you heard about this?
Yes, it's not a news story. The particular story you're talking about is new, but the whole idea of the president actually benefiting from the impeachment has been a storyline for ever since they began talking about the possibility of impeachment. And the issue is, the reason why it is important is look what happened if you go back not that long ago, back to 2016 in the spring, when the British people were voting on Brexit, and they passed it. They passed to leave the European Union because they felt they were losing their country to the bureaucrats in Brussels, who they didn't even know, who were changing their laws and changing their culture and their history. And so they voted against it. But the elites tried for 3 years to overturn it. And we had an election here recently in Britain, and we got a huge majority of basically conservative people to bring in the government on a freestanding basis, because they're basically angry at the delay in getting things done. And I think the same thing's true, and that led to also what happened in the United States with Ronald Reagan, and when he was trying way back in the 80s, and now we're doing it again with Donald Trump. Now we're dealing with, okay, they had a big vote, and the conservatives won, and they're saying, is that going to be a precursor, much like it was in 2016, for the U.S.? And when you look at Nancy Pelosi, when she said, okay, these things have to be in place in order for us to impeach the president. There has to be a majority, has to be both sides have to support it, meaning Democrats and Republicans. The people have to support it, and neither of those two events are there. The American people do not want it. Schiff got shouted down at a town hall meeting last night or over the weekend. So what's happening is that the traditional belief is that if you don't have support for bipartisan support, and the American people want this, you've got a situation where, in this case, the Democrats have put themselves highly at risk to political backlash from the American voters, which is, I think, exactly what's going to happen. And so the foreign leaders are now really saying, Paul, Donald Trump's going to be reelected.
Really? Okay, yeah. So that's a roundabout way. So the foreign leaders. Well, I mean, you look at the stock market. You look at what the economy's doing as well. I mean, it's clear. When I was, I watched some clips from Saturday Night Live that aired this past weekend. And I know, why would you watch those? But I mean, I'm just trying to keep. I'm like, okay, what are these leftists doing? And even they are saying, look, this impeachment is going to ensure the reelection of President Trump. And you can kind of hear a pin drop because the audience is so, they don't want to hear it, but they're now coming around to it as well. And let me ask you this. We're talking with Dan Perkins. Mm-hmm. Have you heard, I saw this on Twitter this morning. I hadn't heard anybody say this yet, but the reason that Chuck Schumer is trying to get Mitch McConnell to agree to a, quote, fair trial, which really just means don't use the power that you have as the Republican majority leader in the Senate, that the Democrats may vote tomorrow to impeach the president but not vote to send the articles to the Senate unless they get the trial they want, meaning they don't want Hunter Biden. They don't want Adam Schiff to actually have to testify. So then this whole thing would be, I mean, the whole thing's been moot from the beginning, but it would just be really just theater this whole time. If that's what they do, this has all just been a show.
You're absolutely right. In fact, I've got a commentary that's under review right now that speaks to what you're talking about. The Democrats think they're using not Bill Clinton as their example. They're using Richard Nixon as their example. And their thinking is that if they pass the articles of impeachment, that Donald Trump, the senators will come up to the White House and Donald Trump will resign as president and everything will be fine. And that's a false narrative, but they're not living in the real world anyway. So the idea that they now understand, there's the story that I wrote last night that's being circulated, is that the Democratic playbook, which I've written about many times, is falling apart. The playbook is what the Republicans have to do when they come to Washington, and what happens if the Republicans are challenged by Democrats and they have to kowtow, and they have to bow down to it, and they have to agree to it. And so what's happening is we're seeing two things that are happening where the Democrats are still trying to play like they're in charge. One, you had the Florida congresswoman who said over the weekend that President Trump, his impeachment trial, that Mitch McConnell should recuse himself because he's supporting the president.
Oh my
That's
God.
number one. And number two, Chuck Schumer is telling Mitch McConnell what witnesses he should call. So the Democrats are trying to grab control of the impeachment trial away from the Republicans, because if they're not successful, then all the things you just talked about, there's the possibility that Schiff and the Bidens and Hillary and who else knows are going to be called to testify before the Senate committee, and the Democrats don't want that. But they're living in an unrealistic world, or not a real world, because they think they can have their cake and eat it too. And what's going on is you're seeing the last desperate throes of a party that's about to implode.
So we haven't talked since the Inspector General report came out last week. What were your thoughts on that, and what are your thoughts on U.S. Attorney John Durham?
I wasn't surprised. I was telling people when I was doing interviews, don't expect a lot from Horowitz, because remember, he was an Obama appointee. He's part of the deep state. He did say some things that I was surprised that he talked about the 17 mistakes that the Justice Department and FBI made. Comey's now admitting over the weekend that maybe he made some mistakes, or there were some flaws in the process. But so his report was interesting. It gave us some support to some things that we suspected, but we actually saw them. He didn't exonerate anybody in the administration, and I think when the fact that both Durham and Barr reacted to the positioning of Horowitz on his report about nobody was culpable, nobody broke any laws, I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen when Durham comes out, he'll come out with, and there were some people who were saying, and I think I agree with them, Durham may not come out with a report. Durham may come out with indictments.
Yeah.
And that will be his report. The people he indicts. But I'm hopeful that they're going to see some people in orange jumpsuits.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are. I think at this point that's going to happen one way or the other. The question is, what level of officials are going to go down for everything that's transpired. Dan Perkins, really appreciate it, sir. It's always great to talk to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me, and have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas to you. Folks, we're got a lot of great show for you. We're going to make a YouTube video of this, put it up at the YouTube channel, Conduit News. Please subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications. Also, you can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News. Now, moving on here. So I found this article about Don Jones. So a couple of days ago, we had this story by Eric Besson in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Prosecutors request leniency for lobbyist in state graft case. Okay. Now, who's Don Jones? He's the guy from New Jersey that Milty. Now, why do I always want to call him Milty? Because they always use like a bunch of different names for Rusty Cranford. Rusty Milton Cranford. Anyway, Rusty Cranford, the lobbyist here in Arkansas that's been sentenced to 7 years because he was basically the linchpin in a lot of corruption when it comes to Medicaid fraud and things like that. Don Jones is the guy that initially the government said Rusty Cranford was trying to have killed because he pled. He was like the first guy to plead guilty and start cooperating with the government. This lobbyist from New Jersey. So prosecutors have requested leniency for the lobbyist in the state graft case because he was so helpful. And the Arkansas Times this morning, or yesterday afternoon rather, Arkansas Times reporting headline, Pennsylvania lobbyist tied to Arkansas public corruption case gets 1 year in prison. So there you have it. cooperating with the government, especially when you're the first. I mean, because think about it. Don Jones from New Jersey taking the plea, however many years ago he did. Was it in December of 2016 or December of 2017? Somewhere, it was in December. Don Jones taking this plea eventually led to the governor's nephew taking a plea, State Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. I mean, imagine that. Imagine that. Don Jones taking a plea leads to all these other people taking pleas, and eventually the governor's nephew, State Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, and he's going to be we're awaiting sentencing on him as well. Because Jeremy Hutchinson is now cooperating. Isn't that weird? Don Jones cooperated with the federal government. Now we're told that Senator Jeremy Hutchinson is cooperating with the federal government, trying to tell them something. Who knows? Who knows what Jeremy is going to say, what he already has said. The Philadelphia Inquirer reports that Donald D.A. Jones, a former political consultant for Preferred Family Health Care, is going to get 1 year in federal prison. He pled guilty. He was sentenced for a scheme, listen to this, initially to pay $90,000 to a potential challenger to then U.S. Representative Bob Brady in 2012 to get him to drop out of the race. Stop. Where have we heard about paying challengers to get them to drop out of the race? Oh, I know. Yeah, in the state house race. Yeah. Remember that? Where you had somebody offering you had a supporter of Dr. Kolpeck's offering the mayor of Lake City to drop out of the race if they can get medical school scholarships for Milligan's daughter. Remember that? Anyway, by the way, what is the update on the investigation? The Attorney General's office was investigating that. You know, you kind of need to know the conclusion of that investigation before we vote in March in this Republican primary. It's a three-way Republican race between Milligan, Dr. Kolpeck, and Bobby Long. It'd been really, a lot of people were wondering if Milligan was going to file. You know what I mean? And he did file, but we were like, well, he really needs to file now. He kind of has to file now, because if he doesn't file, it's going to look like... Anyway. But anyway, so Don Jones was sentenced for a scheme to pay $90,000 to a potential challenger to Congressman Bob Brady in 2012 to get him to drop out of the race. Jones was a strategist for Brady. Brady was not charged, but retired from Congress. An aide received 18 months, and the candidate targeted for a payoff got probation. Jones admitted he tried to hide the payments and that he lied to the FBI. Apparently, Jones, who is 64 years old, he apologized during the sentencing, said the episode had destroyed his reputation and integrity. Max Brantley writes, the Brady matter wasn't Jones's only slip. His sentencing also was related to his role in taking $1 million from the Missouri-based nonprofit and using it to lobby Congress, an activity you can't do. Now, why can't you do that? It's because you're talking about Medicaid money. You can't take Medicaid money, taxpayer money, give it to these third-party workers, and then the company then takes the federal dollars and gives it to politicians to lobby them. You can't do that. And that's what they were doing. And that's why this is such a huge federal case that is still ongoing, because that's just a huge no-no. It's a giant red flag. So, anyway, they were kicking back money to lobbyist Rusty Cranford and others, former state representative Eddie Cooper. Then, of course, Cranford had been sentenced to prison, as others have, involving this scheme with Cranford. You also had Senator John Woods, his friend Randall Shelton, Orrin Paris III, Representative Micah Neal. Let's see, still waiting sentencing on Representative Eddie Cooper. Still waiting sentencing on Senator Hank Wilkins and former Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. And, of course, Tom and Bontia Goss, they've pleaded not guilty, and they are out on bond, and we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, It just goes to show you, if you're the first one, and look at this, kind of the same thing happened with State Representative Mike Neal when he took his plea. It goes to show you that if you cooperate with the government and, early on, that you can. I'm just telling, there's people listening to this that, may be involved in some of this stuff. I don't know. Maybe honesty is the best policy at this point. I mean, much of this work, yeah, if you break the law, you gotta pay a penalty. But much of this stuff is really just to restore confidence back in government, to end this illegal graft that's going on, to make an example out of some who want to carve out a financial niche for themselves. And in the wake of all this, I do have to remind you that, and this kind of segues into the board. For those of you who don't know, the board this week just says ACEs in races. Specifically, we're talking about primary races. I do have to tell you that, the two senators that had bills that were trying to stop and expose all of the corruption we're seeing these people go to jail for today, were basically ousted with the support of Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson. He backed their primary challengers. I'm talking about the late Senator Linda Collins. Her bill would have made it essentially illegal for Jeremy Hutchinson to do what he's been doing. Of course, it was already illegal, but would have required that you can't take extra money and represent clients and then also represent them in the legislature. And that's what Jeremy Hutchinson was doing, clearly. And it was a well-known secret. You're just not supposed to talk about it. It was a well-known fact that just you don't talk about. So it wasn't even a secret. Everybody knew about it. Then you've got former Senator Brian King. Brian King had a bill that would make people who receive Medicaid entities, if you're a legislator or the spouse of a legislator and you receive Medicaid money, you have to disclose that you're receiving that money, just to give the public a better idea of why you may be voting the way you do on certain bills. And my gosh, that struck a nerve. Session after session after session, he kept trying to get it passed, and he couldn't get it passed. And he's no longer serving. I guess my point is, the General Assembly, this last go, had an opportunity. They could have retaken up those measures, could have tweaked them if you don't like them specifically, but they didn't do any of that. Instead, we're told, well, we'll put in an ethics system where senators need to report on each other. Senators need to report on each other. So they can do that now, and they failed to do it. Why? Well, now they have there's a committee for that now. No. If you report on somebody, you get a primary opponent, and you no longer serve in office because the media is not going to say anything about it. And the fact that the Arkansas Democrat Gazette will not report, when they talk about corruption, they will not report on the fact that the governor backed the opponents of two senators, again, the late Senator Linda Collins and Brian King, that had legislation that would undo all of this. Meaning when they reported on Senator Jeremy Hutchinson and everybody else, they don't ever throw that in. That is a valuable piece of information. So back to this board here. The governor has a history of taking sides. The Republican Party of Arkansas is not to take sides in a Republican primary. You're just supposed to let them go, let the chips fall where they may. The governor doesn't really care about the spirit of that rule, and the governor has used his office to back Republicans that are more loyal to him and his agenda, which is not a conservative one. And he's done this multiple times. But I do want to make a point. This time around, he's asked about the primaries, and he says he's only interested, that he can tell, he's only interested in the Jonesboro race. He's only interested in supporting John Cooper over State Representative Dan Sullivan. Well, and we can take him at his word. I mean, clearly he doesn't want a conservative like Dan Sullivan in the Senate. He would rather have somebody that votes to raise your taxes and votes to kill stand-your-ground laws. He would rather have that person. That's who John Cooper is, among other things. And that's fine. I mean, I think we can expect that. That's not a surprise to anybody, that big government Republican Asa Hutchinson would support big government Republican John Cooper. But I would just say the idea that that's the only race that Ace is, I don't believe that. Ace is in every one of these primaries indirectly, and to assume otherwise is complete ignorance. And it can go something like this. I mean, you don't think these Chamber of Commerce types from these local areas where there are these primaries, you don't think these Chamber of Commerce types call the governor and be like, hey, who do you want in this race? And the governor's going to say, oh, I want this person. And they're like, okay, well, I may not say it publicly, but, you know, I'd rather have. Anyway, for all you folks out there running in primary races, just so you know, it's extremely likely that behind the scenes, there are people in office that are taking sides. And that's just something to be aware of and act accordingly. We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us, back with us. Coming up the next, let's just go over briefly when we come back the filings that have been released in the Biden lawsuit. Man, isn't it crazy that Hunter Biden fathered a child by an Arkansas woman who was in D.C. at the same time Hunter Biden was pursuing his sister-in-law after the death of his brother, and then his sister-in-law was like, no, I don't think I want to be with you anymore. And now I'm told that Hunter Biden, his new wife, she's pregnant right now as well, and they're trying to get this Arkansas woman, Alexis, is trying to get child support. So there's got to be all of this. You know, the DNA test came back positive. He is the father. But Circuit Judge Don McSpadden is now involved in a case that's going to have national implications. And in order for child support to happen, you got to see financials. And we know that Hunter Biden was making $80,000 a month for a Ukrainian natural gas company. And we also know, by the way, according to Rudy Giuliani, in his trip to Ukraine, there's even more money that's gone to Hunter Biden, laundering it through Cyprus, of all places. When's the last time you heard about Cyprus? Oh, yeah. Back in a minute.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea, today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks. Hey, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Hour number 2. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with the Family Council. The Family Council's Ken Yang will be back with us. Always great to talk about him. Did you see the familycouncil.org post from December 12th? Wisconsin atheists bully Arkansas school district. We'll be talking about that. I didn't hear about this, but it has to do with KFSM News reporting that Pea Ridge Public Schools have suspended public prayer at school board meetings and ball games following a complaint from the Wisconsin-based Freedom from Religion Foundation. They're once again back. They do this every couple of years. Most of the time you hear from the Freedom from Religion Foundation out of Wisconsin. Every time this year, not because of prayer at ball games or anything like that, but you hear about it because of nativity scenes and things like that, you know. Oh, we can't believe that you put up a nativity scene. You're promoting one religion over the other. I just telling you. Do you really think? Let me. I was having a conversation. It was a great conversation the other day with somebody that I respect, but we disagreed on religion and public life, essentially. And this person was like, listen. I'm a Christian, but I just don't think the government has any business putting a Ten Commandments statue there because it's just, it basically opens us up to having to put the statue of Baphomet there. And I disagree with that. I completely disagree with that. Because if you wanted a statue of Baphomet, then you have to have the people have to actually use the government. Because, see, that particular Ten Commandments monument by Senator Rapert was put there because there was a bill filed. First of all, there was somebody elected. Then there was a bill filed. Then it was debated, and it went through the 2 committees and 2 chambers. And then, so if the Satanists, if the devil worshipers want to run on that platform and they want to get somebody elected, and then they want to file a bill, and they want to go through that process, good luck to you. I don't think you're going to, you see what I'm saying? And if that law were to pass and then somebody's like, well, we're not going to do it, well, then you do have a legal case, and you have a double standard there where one religion's being favored over another, but it's not happening. And so, to me, a strict interpretation of the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law. Well, Congress is Congress in D.C., and it's respecting the establishment of religion. What does that mean? Well, it means that this is the religion you have to follow. Curtailing religious freedom. And that's not what a Ten Commandments statue does. It may offend you. It may offend you. And by the way, if you have a problem with the Ten Commandments statue, by the way, on the grounds of the Arkansas Capitol, then I would imagine you also have a problem with the Ten Commandments that are on the Supreme Court building. Are we going to remove those? And it really just goes to show you, because I don't believe in this evolution of, well, we've evolved, and that was back then, and now we're different, and that's ridiculous in terms of, we're still the same depraved, fallen people that we are, and we have our founders that set up a government counting on men going to use power to try to rule against other men. That's why they limited what government can do to you by force with the Bill of Rights. But I really just, here's another example. If you believe the current Supreme Court precedent for what is a violation of the Establishment Clause which is essentially expression of God in public life, is where it's heading. If you believe that, then you just must have to ignore the fact that when a president is deciding whether or not to veto or sign a piece of legislation, he's got a certain amount of time to do it before it goes back to Congress. And whatever number of days that is, I think it's 10 or something. They don't count Sunday, though. Sunday does not count when, as far as, accruing the days before you have to decide whether to veto or sign a piece of legislation from Congress. Now, why is it? Sunday is a specifically Christian day of the week. So it's in the Constitution itself that makes provisions for the Sunday services, or, Christian, or the Sabbath, if you will. So I guess the Founding Fathers, they were in complete defiance of the current Supreme Court decision on the Establishment Clause. I didn't mean to get into all this, but it just really upsets me. It upsets me. We hear from this Wisconsin Freedom from Religion Foundation once a year, and it's normally about nativity scenes, and you can't have a nativity scene in the public courthouse. Are you crazy? Of course we can. Of course we can have a nativity scene on public grounds. Of course we can. And if you start to go down this road, then eventually you're not going to be able to have Christmas lights. Because they're Christmas lights. Well, they're holiday lights. Yeah, but most people think they're Christian, and that's establishing a religion for me. And I just don't want to. I don't want to jog by those Christmas lights at night because it's reminding me of religion. And you know what? The whole thing is predicated on the idea of being an atheist is not a worldview that's shoved down your throat. Being a Christian or being a Muslim or being a Buddhist or whatever, that's a worldview that can oppress somebody else. But being an atheist is not a worldview because it's somehow held up as more legitimate because, it's science. Trying to pass laws or trying to get judges to force God out of public life on the sidewalk, that's not a worldview that's going to affect anybody negatively. But us putting a nativity scene on a courthouse is forcing religion on people. Give me a break. It's a double standard. Unbelief is a worldview, just like belief is a worldview. We'll talk with Ken Yang about this coming up. Circuit Judge Don McSpadden declined Monday morning to seal a motion for a protective order filed by an attorney defending Hunter Biden in a paternity lawsuit. All right, so not going to seal it. They're sealing. They're going to seal the financial records, but they're not going to seal. Oh, and there was going to be an actual deposition on the 23rd. That's been postponed. The attorney for Hunter Biden said, "You can't make this guy testify on Christmas Eve." Frank Lockwood with the story again. Arkansas Democrat Gazette. The Hunter Biden's attorney's name is Langdon, who didn't, according to this, return a call Monday seeking comment. The judge quashed a notice of deposition. Okay, we just covered that on the 23rd. So it wasn't a testimony, it was a deposition. But during the call, he also granted Langdon's request for a hearing on his motion for protective order, an order signed by McSpadden, setting the hearing for 9:30, January 7th. I want to get to the part where it talks about Hunter Biden's dad being Joe Biden. In the motion and brief filed Friday, Hunter Biden's attorney argued that McSpadden's protective order wasn't broad enough. Quote, although the court has entered a protective order in this cause, only those deposition excerpts that contain or allude to confidential financial information shall be sealed. Foreseeably, all other information obtained at the deposition that is not considered financial information would be open to the world's media, including other third parties who are only interested in matters unrelating to the issues before this court. Public disclosure of the deposition can only be for the purpose of continued annoyance or attempts to embarrass the defendant. Interesting. Quote, to avoid annoyance, embarrassment, oppression, or undue burden and expense to the parties and their attorneys by appearing for a deposition in Little Rock, Arkansas on Christmas Eve for unrestricted questioning, which will undoubtedly lead to objections and possibly suspension of such deposition, Hunter Biden requests that the court direct the parties with an order that certain matters not be inquired into or that the scope of the discovery be limited to certain matters. Meaning Hunter Biden only wants to, he basically wants to know what the questions are beforehand. Don't ask me about this. Don't ask me about Burisma. Don't ask me about the Ukraine. Don't ask me about these situations. Don't ask me about how much money you got. Did you get $3 million laundered from Cyprus, from Ukraine via Cyprus? That's what some people think has been discovered. Of course, this has to do with London Roberts. She's the one that filed this paternity suit back on May the 28th. Saying that her and Hunter Biden were in a relationship, and that she gave birth to a child in August of 2018 as a result of the relationship. DNA testing came back positive. Hunter Biden is the father. He is not contesting the paternity. So Hunter Biden needs to pay up, man. Where's all that money? $80,000 a month? You don't think the Arkansas mother that's the mother to your child hasn't been reading the headlines about how much money you've made and she doesn't have a dime of it? Anyway, so they're going to seal the financial records. I can understand that. They don't need to seal anything else. This is going to be very interesting. National media will be very interested to see what comes out of this. I tell you what, it might be, if the Senate trial goes the way that it should, and Hunter Biden is called, it could be interesting. You know, maybe the next motion is, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I can't make this paternity suit. I've been subpoenaed to appear before the Senate. They're on the same day. I can't help it. I have to pick one. You know, if I go and testify there, of course, he may want to testify in the paternity. Can you imagine if he tells the Senate, I can't testify this day because I got to see about my child and my former girlfriend. Max Brantley at the Arkansas Times is celebrating Hallmark's decision to backtrack and continue airing commercials with a same-sex couple of two women kissing. Now, the Hallmark channel pulled these ads because there was complaints, because the Hallmark channel is pretty much a family-friendly channel. Now, that is a very politically incorrect statement because what it's suggesting is that there are people that believe that same-sex physical expression, i.e. kissing, is not family-friendly. That's very offensive today, to claim that a woman and a woman kissing in a romantic way is somehow not family-friendly is very politically incorrect. And yet, many of you out there believe that to be the case because you have a biblical worldview of the family and a biblical worldview of sexuality. And that is very offensive to the politically correct concept of our culture right now. The question I have for you, is that the majority opinion or is that the minority opinion? Headline from Max Brantley, Arkansas Times, Hallmark backtracks on banning ad depicting same-sex wedding. And listen to what Max says. Quote, the Hallmark channel backtracked Sunday on its decision to stop airing a commercial for Zola, a wedding planning company that depicted the marriage of women. It was a welcome pushback against bullies intent on forcing their beliefs on others. Stop. Wow. So the people that objected to this being aired on the Hallmark Channel, they're the bullies. LGBT people aren't bullies. LGBT people aren't bullies, I guess. Like the RSTLNE, would you like to buy? They're not bullies at all. Boy, you talk about living on different planets. Because I'm telling you right now, in terms of the LGBT community, the alphabet people, as Dave Chappelle called, folks, they're the bullies. They're the militant ones. They're the ones that stomp their feet and demand that you not only tolerate, which everybody's fine with tolerating, do what you want to do, but you have to heartily approve. It's a very totalitarian mindset. There are people that upset, well, go do what you want to do. I mean, if you ask me, I may not agree with this lifestyle choice or that lifestyle choice. No, you must agree with it. The fact that even if you keep it to yourself, you're a bigot. Really drives people nuts that there are people out there with a difference of opinion. And yet, we've got all these people right now across the whole state of Arkansas today that have differing opinions on almost an infinite amount of issues. It's not infinite, and they're still going to be driving on the same roads. They're still going to be seeing each other in grocery stores and gas stations, and people are going to get along just fine. What's the big deal? Max Brantley, it was a welcome pushback against bullies intent on forcing their beliefs on others. There's just a bunch of moms in an organized way contacting Hallmark saying, I don't appreciate these family-friendly shows that are about traditional couples. It's about a man and a woman falling in love over the holidays, and we set our kids down. It's something we can have on, and there are people that don't agree with the current societal definitions of what sexuality is. There are other people that conform to the more biblical standard, and that may be offensive to people, but Hallmark was doing X, meaning they had a standard, and people noticed those standards changing. They let Hallmark know about it. Hallmark decided to pull the ads, and that is when the bullies got kicked in, Max. The bullies were activated when Hallmark decided to make a business decision, because guess what? The vast majority of flyover country that for some reason loves these Hallmark movies have a different worldview than the coastal elites. They just do. He goes on, same-sex marriage is constitutionally protected in the United States. When Hallmark bowed to the minority that wants to be protected from even seeing its existence, it amounted to tyranny of a minority. Do you believe that the LGBT folks and sympathizers are the majority in this country, or do you believe they are the minority in this country? Honest question. I don't think they're the majority at all. I think it's just like a lot of people that voted for Donald Trump but didn't tell you they were going to vote for Donald Trump. Again, people are willing to keep things to themselves. People are willing to treat their fellow man with dignity and respect. But when you're talking about what goes on in your home, in your four walls, and this is what's so sad. Hallmark this is what it's just, I say it's sad. I mean, it's not a huge issue with me. I don't watch the Hallmark Channel. I don't have cable, okay? But I have family that do. And it just is like, here's this phenomenon of where you have folks who are watching and consuming this product. It's very, very profitable. And yet, the LGBT RSTLNE community has got to ruin it. Or find a way to, because they've already been complaining about they need to have representation. There needs to be a Hallmark Christmas movie that has to do with gay people. And there's no gay people falling in love, and that's just not right. Well, there's a reason Hallmark hasn't made that movie yet. And it's because it would hurt the demographic that's watching the Hallmark Channel. It just would. I'm not saying there's not. I would venture to say there's plenty of gay men watching those movies. But you get my point. Now, Are they probably going to make one? Yeah. Now? Yeah. Yeah, next year, I guarantee you they're going to have one because this is how things go. If you don't make one, if Hallmark Channel doesn't make a same-sex Christmas movie next year, then they're bigots, even though they haven't done anything bigoted. You know, but by not paying tribute to this small minority in our society, by not paying tribute to them, by not acknowledging them, that must mean you hate them. And that is just not true. It is just not true. Just because you don't cater to a certain demographic doesn't mean you hate that demographic. Again, most Americans don't care. You go do what you want to do. You go be who you want to be. But when it comes to what comes in their actual home, and if there was already a standard and then that standard changes, you're going to get some pushback. But back to Max Brantley. For some reason, I feel like Max Brantley, I know this isn't news to anyone, I feel like Max Brantley of the Arkansas Times is really anti-Christian. Breaking news today. He goes on, when Hallmark bowed to the minority that wants to be protected from even seeing its existence, it amounted to the tyranny of the minority. Perhaps depictions of Christian churches in commercials should be barred for fear of offending those of other beliefs or non-believers. Again, that would depend on the demographic. I don't think you would have Christian churches if, let's say, you had like the Satanic Channel. I mean, you're not going to have so many Christian churches. Maybe he goes on, alcohol commercials. Lots would like to see them banned for both moral and public health reasons. The censorship campaign was an enlargement of the perversion of the First Amendment by religionists. That is law in Arkansas. It is, by state law, a violation of a certain group's religious beliefs if they are prevented from discriminating against LGBTQ people, whether in employment, housing, public accommodation, or commercials. That's right, Max Brantley. I think he kind of feels like a lot of Arkansans are bigots. The religionists also want to protect bullying of gay kids. Do not mock the Family Council. Opposed anti-bullying legislation on the ground it might provide protection to homosexuals. Hallmark had first bowed to the petition campaign by religious pressure group. The outcry in response prompted it to reconsider. So there you go. Seems well, obviously Max Brantley doesn't like the Family Council because they stand up for traditional American values and a Christian biblical worldview. Who do you agree with? Do you agree with Max Brantley here? We've got to take a break. I've gone way over. Forgive me, folks. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Jackie on Facebook, the ad features two women getting married. It's not just about the kiss. They are forcing parents to explain how two women can get married. The LGBTQ movement is intolerant. Interesting thought. That's true. That is true. You know, I mean, I guess you could also say, well, you got to have that conversation at some point. Anyway, I'm telling you, man, it's a wild world that we live in, isn't it? I mean, it's nuts. It's just getting harder and harder. And, I mean, those 1950s rock and roll moms were right, by the way.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Buddhists and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. We need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you.
Find out more.
You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. It's that time again. We're going to check in with Family Council's Ken Yang. He's on the line. Ken, how are you this morning, man?
Oh, not too bad. It's a little cold, but not too bad.
I'll ask you what a guest last hour asked me. Christmas shopping. Are you all finished?
I am not. It's time to test out Amazon's the 2-day delivery policy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. Hey, you know what? We get to pay that sales tax, though. So, I mean, we're really contributing to society. So that's the good thing.
I swear. I mean, anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, it is. Sorry.
Brick and mortar stores were closing before the internet existed. I'll just put it at that.
Okay. All right. So Ken, I see that this blog post, familycouncil.org, Wisconsin Atheists Bully Arkansas School District. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah, little late last week, it was kind of didn't make a lot of news, but, Pea Ridge Public Schools suspended public prayer at school board meetings and at ball games because they got a complaint from that atheist group based in Wisconsin. And I think it's our opinion that the school district got really bad advice from their attorneys. I think if you read an article, their attorney has advised them to do this. And time and time again, the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld prayer before city council meetings and meetings of that sort because it really doesn't violate the Establishment Clause, and you got multiple court cases to back that up. And I think the biggest thing I tell people is, they're always threatening, just threatening. And for the most part, not to say that they haven't ever, filed a lawsuit, but for the majority of the time, if people, school districts, city councils would just stand their ground and say, no, we're going to keep praying, or no, we're going to keep doing this or advertising this, they do not file a lawsuit. They do not have the ability to file hundreds of lawsuits. I mean, they're literally threatening hundreds, if not thousands, of school districts and organizations across the nation. They don't have the ability to go after each one of them. All they do is just print up a letter and send it to these people.
So you're saying that we shouldn't take the Freedom from Religion Foundation
no, I mean,
serious.
they threatened the Harrison Public School District back in 2017, and the school district decided to keep praying. They didn't do anything. They threatened Governor Hutchinson's over his Bible verses on Sundays. Governor Hutchinson keeps posting. They try to threaten the city of El Dorado over its 40 Days of Prayer campaign back in 2016, and they stood firm. And so you'll see a lot of these places that have stood firm. They just the people with the atheist group, they don't have that ability to do so. And the law is on our side too, and so that's what's troubling for some of these leaders in our local school districts or municipalities. They're not willing to stand up for what's right.
Yeah, I think. Is this Freedom from Religion Foundation? Yeah, all the way back in 2011, just to kind of give even more context, because I covered this story. There was the Greene County School District. There was a teacher that put up a nativity scene on a bulletin board. You know how the teachers do with it. They have like the I don't know what's it, the border around, and then a nativity scene. And they got a letter. This was back in 2011. They got a letter from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and the school went ahead and allowed the nativity scene. I mean, so they ignored it, and they were worried they were going to get sued. But that's a valuable piece of information. So in terms of they file thousands or they send thousands of letters, and they don't have the money to actually take any of these to court or all of them to court. So do you think this Fort Smith, the Pea Ridge Public Schools, do you think they're going to reverse course and start to pray again before school board meetings?
I haven't heard otherwise. We've encouraged people living in that area to, contact their school board people, contact the school district to, encourage them. And, for instance, what if they do sue or they do take them, to court, there are plenty of Christian defense groups that will come to the aid of these school districts, as they've done so in the past in other places. And so, the law's on our side, and there are people willing to help on our side. And, we have religious freedom here in the state of Arkansas and here in the nation, but, most importantly here in the state of Arkansas. And people shouldn't be afraid to exercise that. And especially ones that, you were saying in an earlier segment of people saying that they don't want to bring a church to government. And there's a huge difference. I encourage people to read de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. There's a huge difference between separation of church and state and separation of religion and state. Two totally different things.
Can you elaborate on that? And how do you see the difference?
Well, your church is a established organization. It's establishment, brick and mortar, and almost an establishment type rules. Might even stretch to say, how kind of like the Islamic faith, where it's a way of life.
Right.
While religious liberty is obviously all-encompassing. Our background is from Judeo-Christian values, and so you take those morals and those the things that are good within a religion. Some people may think it's a different religion than Christianity, and they bring that. That's the basis of who they are. They bring that to government. They're not a government. They bring it to work, whether they're a doctor or attorney or so on and so forth. And so to say that you can't bring something that's core within you is just totally false.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're professing to be a Christian, then you don't stop being a Christian when you're on the school board, or when you're a state rep, or when you're a teacher or a ball player, or so on and so forth.
That's very well said. We're talking with Family Counsel's Ken Yang. Now, did you mention, because I'm reading in this article up at familycouncil.org, again, first of all, folks, if you're just joining us, the Pea Ridge Public School System, they got a letter from the Freedom from Religion Foundation threatening them with a lawsuit. And so in response, they suspended public prayer at school board meetings and at ball games. And so you just heard Ken saying that the attorneys gave the school board some really lousy advice. In 2014, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that praying before the city council meetings did not violate the Establishment Clause. And then, I didn't realize this. Did you mention that the Freedom from Religion Foundation successfully, earlier this year, bullied schools in Greenwood, the Greenwood School District, to stop promoting events like See You at the Pole, just to promote it?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes, so they once again sent a letter to the Greenwood School District telling them to stop promoting events like See You at the polls. They even did so. I think the Springdale Public Schools, they persuaded them, or I would say bullied them, to remove a cross that was reportedly displayed in the lunchroom at one of the elementary schools. And so, they really do, and I've never seen one of the letters, but they really do a good job of scaring, whether it's the Greenwood School District or the Linda Childers Knapp Elementary School in Springdale, to kind of backtrack on celebrating religion.
Tell me about the Freedom from Religion Foundation complaining about Arkansas's public schools allowing students to study the Bible academically. They don't like that, right?
No, they don't. And so what was it, a few years ago, the legislature decided that was the state book. Then it decided that we could teach the Bible, and then last year a curriculum was created for school districts to use. And they go through the fact that it's religious text, and that it's even if the students are studying it academically, they think that it's still promoting one particular type of religion and attempt to indoctrinate the next generation. But as we all know, the Bible is being taught academically, and it's you take out religion altogether, it's one of the oldest texts in existence in human history, and we study things like that all the time in school.
I mean, I'm going down this list here. Folks, you've got to check this article out at familycouncil.org. So this same group, they threatened law enforcement that had In God We Trust on their police cruisers. They remember what they did to the A-State football players. They had that was crazy. They had tragic loss of their teammates, and they put like a cross on the back of the helmet, and they complained to Arkansas State, you can't have a cross on the back of the helmet. I mean, it's just, these folks just want to control literally every aspect of society, and really it's a freedom of speech issue in a way as well.
Yes, it's the First Amendment issue, and to put it in a religious term, Satan and the devil, they're constantly on the move to ruin the fabric of the moral fabric of our society.
No, I completely agree with that. Tell me about what the Family Council does when it comes to married couples. You guys are looking for the longest married couple, right?
Yeah, so every year I think we announce this back in November, and we'll probably do a more official announcement this week. We look for Arkansas's longest married couple every year, and we celebrate them in Little Rock. Usually it's done at the governor's mansion. Sometimes it's done off-site. It just depends. And we try to celebrate them in late February or early March. And so we look for anyone that's been married that currently lives in Arkansas, has been married for over 70 years, and we celebrate the number one longest married couple, and then we celebrate the top 10. And we just kind of, I tell everybody, as you get, people tell me all the time, as you get older, there's less people celebrate. When you're young, you're sweet 16, 18th birthday, 21st, getting engaged, getting married, your first kid, all that other stuff. And when you get older, people forget. And so to celebrate marriage, to celebrate these people that have been married for over 70 years, to see the smiles on their faces, to be able to come to Little Rock, to go to the governor's mansion, to meet the governor and the first lady. I mean, they just love it. And it's something, in my opinion, very non-controversial. To celebrate the fact that people are still living today that have been married. I think last year was 79 years.
That's awesome. 79 years of marriage.
Yep.
Wow.
And so people, if you know of anyone, people can email me at ken@familycouncil.org and submit their information, and we'll put them on a list, and we'll keep in constant contact. And once the entries close in February, we'll let people know who the top 10 is again this year.
Wow. Who's the longest? I'm not going to ask it. I was going to ask who. Never mind. another. Considering the Hallmark controversy. Anyway, Ken Yang, I appreciate you coming on, sir. Thank you so much for being with us.
No problem. Appreciate it.
Okay, Ken Yang, familycouncil.org. I was going to ask him who's the longest same-sex married couple. Because everybody's got to have a grievance. Everybody's got to have everybody's got to be a victim these days. That is a great thing that Family Council is doing, though. By the way, highlighting this success, this thing called marriage. I mean, that's 70. Did he say 78 or 79? 78. That's a ton. That's a long time to be married. How many guys out there are like, I don't know. I don't know if I can make it that long. 870-275-9799. Generally, it's fantastic to be married, by the way. Going to take a break, going to reset. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
There's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome back. Yeah, by the way, like this was on that Freedom from Religion Foundation, you know, considering it's Christmas. I remember this. I covered this story extensively back in 2011. All I can find on it right now, just quickly Googling it, is a story about the aftermath of it from a website called The New American. Despite the excitement and anticipation for Christmas season that pervades the nation every year, the religious element of the holiday continues to be a point of contention. In Paragould, Arkansas, again, this was from 2011. In Paragould, Arkansas, for example, the Greene County School Board forced the removal of a nativity scene that was displayed at one of its elementary schools, adhering to local atheists who articulated the tired maxim of separation of church and state. After some persistent protests and displays of heroism by the elementary counselor, Kay Williams, however, the school board gave in and permitted the nativity scene to be put up once again. Again, in the context here, because I remember this story because I covered it, this was just about they were getting advice from their attorneys, just like this P. Ridge today is getting advice from their attorneys, saying, because the school boards are just terrified. Their budgets are tight, and they don't want to have any lawsuits. They don't want to have to come up with money to defend a lawsuit. The problem is these Freedom from Religion Foundation, they send out all of these letters, thousands of letters a year. They can't possibly go to court with these. So they're just trying to bully folks. That's what they are. And there's clear, you just got to stand up for something like this, you know? And that's what, back in 2011, that's actually what the Greene County School Board did. They just stood up and said, you know what, if we get sued, we get sued, but we're going to do what's right. And we're not going to tell a teacher that they can't put a nativity scene up for Christmas on a bulletin board. Do you guys remember when you guys were in elementary school, the bulletin board? That was a big deal, right? It's like, oh, it's the new season. Okay, all right. It's now fall. We've got the orange and we've got the pumpkins on the bulletin boards in the hallways. Remember that? That was always a big deal. Teachers always having to decorate, depending on which season it was. It's probably pretty exhausting in a lot of ways. Let's see here. 79 years. Paul is saying that it was actually 79 years, not 78 years. So we've got audience out there that's the longest married couple last year was 79. So that means if you got married right now, Joe, you'd be 105 years old if you got to 79 years. 104, 105. Yeah, that average is going to go down, right? Because think about my grandmother got married when she was 16. They easily made it to their 50th anniversary. I got married when I was 24, right? We've been married now 11 years. So, I mean, that number is going to continue to go. Well, I mean, you also have modern medicine, you know? So maybe not. Maybe people will live longer and it'll compensate. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Okay. Does anybody know of the soon-to-be town Holiday Island? Many of you may not know it. I mean, I'm not from the Table Rock Lake area, but Holiday Island is a soon-to-be town, apparently. Okay, it's about 8 miles north of Eureka Springs. It was formed in 1970 by McCullough Recreational Properties as a suburban improvement district. Well, so now they want to be incorporated. They want to be able to enforce its own codes. They want to be able to receive state turnback money from gasoline taxes and other taxes to maintain streets and roads. They want to be able to establish zoning and building ordinances. According to Dan Keese, who's the Holiday Island Commissioner. So they've got a petition drive to get the incorporation on the 2020 general election ballot. They got 557 signatures from voters. Only 498 signatures were needed. So how often do we get to see this? As I'm reading this article, how often do we get to see a town in this day and age come into existence? How often does that happen? But as I'm reading it, it's not lost on me that we have people in this town of Holiday Island, or this soon-to-be town, that are clamoring for building ordinances and regulations and being able and what's going to happen is people are clamoring for that now, and then they're going to be clamoring and complaining about it at some point in the future. It's only a matter of time, right? I just find it fascinating to kind of think more broadly about, centralizing government power. And it really comes down to what George Washington said, isn't it? Because clearly you want the voters to have the say of being able to incorporate. I'm not challenging that at all, but George Washington said that government is a necessary evil. How necessary is it? Though that's the key. Well, it varies, right? I mean, we have what is it called? A suburban improvement district that now wants to become a town. And this is the debate that we have, you know what I mean? But this is kind of where it starts, because from here, the government meddling only gets worse, and it, works for the common good to a degree. I just find it fascinating. How often do we get to see something like this happen? You know what I mean?
Have you heard about the village in Ohio?
No.
So it was a 119-year-old village. A tax was about to get passed, so the people, they were like, we don't like this. They put a referendum out and they got rid of their local government.
You mean so they just unincorporated?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Well, so the reverse can happen.
Yep.
Where we're just going to disband the political unions of our town. Here's your meme of the day before we go. Who's this by? 4_touchdowns. You got 2 red buttons and leftists are sweating. One says the choice of clothing should never lead to assault. #MeToo. Another button says if you wear a MAGA hat, you're just asking for it. Which one you going to push? Hypocrites. Aren't we all, though, in some way or another? Arkansas, be safe.